So Jordan and I have been trying to sail around the world for the last 10 years. And we live a pretty exceptional life, which we are so grateful for.
Yeah, we've sailed across an ocean. We've gotten to wake up to some of the most beautiful scenery in the world. We're immersed in nature all the time. We get to dive headfirst into distant cultures. And it has been an incredible journey.
But if I'm being completely honest with you, I have to admit recently, I've been dreaming about ending it all and moving home, and I just can't get the idea out of my head.
On the surface, it seems totally crazy that we would even consider giving up this lifestyle, but lately we have been realizing that our priorities have been changing, and we're wondering if we're doing all of this for the wrong reasons at this point.
So this week, Jordan and I are gonna have a conversation that I honestly thought we'd never have, which is we're gonna ask ourselves if it's time to quit the sailing lifestyle once and for all and move ashore.
But to catch you up on why we're even considering this, we need to take you back to the very beginning of our sailing journey. So when we first started sailing on Atticus 1, I like to think of that as the falling in love phase of sailing for us, because like when we fell in love, I remember it was so intense. I was really insecure, like if she felt the same way towards me, and I was just constantly playing mind games. I felt like I was losing my mind. And that's what it was like on Atticus 1 at first. Our highs were so high, and just going to a new country, like sailing into Havana, was this insanely amazing experience. And then sailing to Isla Mujeres, right? Like having these first time experiences was some of the highlights of my life, and yet we had no idea what we were doing. Everything was really difficult. It was a roller coaster of emotion, and I felt like I was getting jerked around from high to low to high to low.
I always assumed that once we started sailing, our lives would be like perfect and we'd be living this amazing lifestyle. But honestly, that first part of sailing was so difficult because everything was new to us. We didn't know how to anchor, where to anchor, how much chain to let out. We dragged into a marina and we could have caused a lot of damage to other people's boats and our own boat. Also learning how to sail for me, I had a couple of panic attacks in the process. We weren't exactly the best communicators initially, so it was a really difficult time. But also, when we did accomplish our goals, I get chills thinking about putting the sail up for the first time or making landfall in another country for the first time. I even remember getting excited about doing visa paperwork for the first time because I was like, I'm going to Cuba.
Yeah, that's true. That was really exciting.
And even little things, like I'd be cooking a meal in an anchorage and I'd be like, I'm making dinner, and we are in the middle of nowhere and I have all the groceries. Or I would feel so badass, like rolling up to a dock in my own little dinghy, you know? I was just like so excited about our new lifestyle. I didn't see it as an inconvenience at all. I just saw it as like, wow, this is such a cool adventure.
Yeah, like me, I live out there, no big deal.
That's my boat.
Yeah, that's my boat. Even though the cons were really high, the pros were even higher. And so the math of it all made sense. Like it was very much worth living that lifestyle, even though it was extremely strenuous and stressful and everything else. So something that I think we have learned about ourselves is just how much enjoyment we get out of accomplishing goals that we set for ourselves. And so that's actually something that I didn't realize in the beginning of sailing would be such a big part of why I love the sailing lifestyle, right? You can set these concrete goals. Like we want to sail to Guatemala for hurricane season. And then you get there in time for hurricane season, you're protected and you feel like you've reached this shelter from hurricane season. Like that's an amazing feeling. And then saying, I want to get to Panama, I want to get to southern Cuba, and you actually get there. That is an incredible feeling. And I think that the middle phase of our sailing journey was all about pursuing that feeling. And I think that that's really typical of a lot of long-term cruisers, right? Like over time, they start doing gnarlier and gnarlier things, going to crazier and crazier places, because you're getting good at this thing. We started to get the skills of anchoring well, of choosing an anchorage, of navigating through uncharted reefs and all of that.
And that's when we decided we wanted to cross the Atlantic Ocean, because that had been our dream for so long, to cross an ocean on our home in a sailboat, and we knew it'd be challenging. And it was this like big mystery and this big rite of passage that we were both so excited about, no matter how difficult it was. And then I got pregnant, and And then I realized, wow, this is gonna be even more difficult probably. But we still wanted to do it, and we still pushed ourselves to get there. I did cross the Atlantic Ocean with a big baby inside of me, and I was throwing up, and it was super, super difficult. And I had a really, really rough time. And I remember when I was in the middle of it, I kept on asking myself, like, why did I do this to myself? But at that stage of our journey, we would come out the other end, and every single time I would turn to Jordan and I would say, thank you for not letting me give up on myself and on this dream, because this is an amazing lifestyle. I'm so grateful we made it. I feel so empowered that you and I did this.
And so once again, like, I feel like the progression of our sailing experience was the pros still outweighed the cons, right? They had all kind of diminished as we got better at sailing and as the newness of it faded away, but then we increased both by taking on intense challenges, and the pros continued to outweigh the cons, so the lifestyle was still very much something that was worth it to us. Then we had Isabella in Malta, which honestly, like, we've never really gone into the details, and I think we still just aren't going to, but we just had a hell of a time in Malta, both with the delivery, and then Isabella had a lot of medical issues after she was born, and so we were running around from one hospital to the next, one specialist to the next, getting CT scans, MRIs, echocardiograms. Like, it was insane. And she's fine. She's doing really, really well. It looks like everything should be fine with her going forward, but it was an intense experience. And so the cons started to really creep up, right? Like, we weren't sure if it was worth it at that point, because, like, to what extent is seeing the world and seeing beautiful places worth the scariness of going through medical stuff like that when abroad, when away from your family? But we wanted to continue the trend of pushing ourselves, going outside of our comfort zone.
Yeah, once we figured out that Isa was healthy and there was no health issue that would stop her from being able to cruise on a sailboat.
Right.
Once that happened, then we were like, okay, let's try to live on this sailboat and sail over the horizon with a baby. And it was something that we were, again, both really nervous about, and we knew it would be difficult, we knew it would be challenging. Still though, we were both really excited to cast the lines, and I remember feeling so reinvigorated again to see our cruising lifestyle through this little baby's eyes. And I just had this romantic idea of having her experience beautiful parts of the world as this little baby.
So over the course of the next couple months, we did slowly learn how to sail with a baby. We cruised around Malta, which was a really great way to just like dip our toes in the water. Then we went to the Ionian Islands in Greece, which, although that was really hard at times, it was also an extremely beautiful cruising ground, and we had a really good time. The southern Peloponnese were wonderful and beautiful. But I remember particularly after we flew back to the States to visit our family, we were there for a couple of weeks and then went back to the boat in Porto Heli in Greece. Our next destination was gonna be the island of Milos in the Aegean, and neither of us really wanted to go. We were bummed that we had said goodbye to our family. We were bummed that we were, you know, away from home again. And then here in Porto Heli, it was like such a nice little town, but it wasn't the kind of place that you would sail around the world to get to.
But it had a good grocery store. There was a place to walk Oso, and there was a playground for Isa.
There was some trails. Yeah, so it was like, it had all the things we need, the amenities, and we just didn't want to leave, like neither of us.
And not only that, it's like, again, it's hard to explain how we had such a good time watching Isabella interact with our family in the States, that pulling her away from that, for me personally, I got to the boat and I just felt so like isolated and lonely, and I felt like we were choosing to like rip ourselves away from this community that we had just because where we were going was beautiful.
It was beautiful. And we actually at the time made a video all about whether we're going to continue to sail because of that experience that we had at exactly that time. And at the time we decided to continue sailing. We sail to Milos, we leave before dawn, it's pitch black out, and of course the weather was doing something different than the forecast had predicted, and we were motoring straight into some short, steep chop for hours. Isabella was seasick, Desiree was seasick, like Isabella's throwing up all over the place, and I'm just thinking to myself, we just left this wonderful situation. Isabella was loving life, hanging out with her family, and now we're like banging into these waves and everyone's miserable. And so that was the first time that I ever considered quitting the sailing lifestyle. It just kind of hit me like a brick wall.
I remember we had a conversation after that sail, and I remember being very relieved because it had been something that was happening to me a lot. I found myself during really rough passages just like dreaming about a home that doesn't move, where you can step out your front yard and just walk. And that was kind of like becoming this obsessive thought that I would have in my mind when we would talk about it, because we're very honest with each other. I always felt like I was like taking a knife and like stabbing it through Jordan's heart. And so after we had that conversation, that was the first time that Jordan was like, it would be kind of nice to walk outside and not have to worry about weather and not see you and Isabella throwing up and being miserable.
Yeah, like the sailing lifestyle has always been difficult, but at this point it started to feel like we were torturing ourselves for a lifestyle that no longer was giving us what we wanted. But then we got to Milos and the weather calmed down. We had a really pleasant second half of that sail. It was beautiful. And then we had some super cool experiences in Milos, like our epic geological adventure to try to find obsidian. And then we had a lot of fun in the Aegean also. So I was back into sailing mode and I was back into, thinking that this would be a good thing for us. But the idea of quitting sailing never really left my mind after that. So whether or not we decide to quit sailing once and for all, we still need to travel back to the United States for some of Isabella's medical appointments. And to me, one of the worst things about traveling is the fact that it can be very difficult to get your hands on a good cup of coffee. And that's why I'm glad to have the sponsor of today's episode, AeroPress. AeroPress is the only coffee maker that makes great travel coffee. And their newest innovation, the AeroPress Go Plus, is an all-in-one brewing system for on-the-go coffee. AeroPress Go Plus has everything that you need to brew and drink a really good cup of coffee, and it's all in a small travel-friendly package. AeroPress combines 3 different brewing methods to give you the full-bodied flavor of French press, the smooth taste of pour-over, and the richness of espresso. And it all fits inside your carry-on. Now, we've actually got an incredible offer for our audience on the Go Plus. Visit aeropress.com/Atticus and use promo code Atticus to save 20% off your order. It's time to say goodbye to crappy coffee, and yes, to better adventures, fueled by better coffee. And a huge thanks to AeroPress for sponsoring this episode. So fast forward several months, we spend the winter in Turkey and start sailing the southwest coast of Turkey. And that coastline is insanely beautiful. It's got some incredibly cool remote anchorages. And so in a lot of ways, that was exactly the kind of experience we wanted when we decided to buy Atticus 1, 10 years ago. And yet, we found ourselves really struggling throughout that entire experience. Now, a lot of it had to do with the particularities of that cruising ground. So the anchorages were very deep, making anchoring very difficult. The weather was very volatile at that time of year, and the marinas are very expensive and very crowded. And so it was difficult for us to get the protection and get the shelter that we needed as these storms would roll through. And that was something that was fine when it was just Desiree and I, right? Like trading that sense of insecurity for adventure, for beauty, for that living out in nature experience, that trade-off was totally worth it. But with Isabella, it's a whole nother thing. Like my anxiety goes off the charts when I feel like our home could be in peril, and if someone could drag into us, and if someone anchors on a short scope too close to us, or whatever. All those situations that like there's a 0.05% chance that it ends in like a really, really bad situation for us. Now all of a sudden, I can't shake that, I can't get it out of my mind, and I just get consumed by it because of Isabella and because of how hard it would be to manage any sort of true emergency with her. And in fact, there was one storm in particular. If you've been following the videos, you probably know the one I'm talking about. We were stuck in a marina that was completely exposed in the direction of the strong winds, and it got straight up scary. And so we made the decision to get Desiree and Isabella off the boat, which was a very dangerous maneuver that went really well. But that experience really shook me. I like turtled. I became extremely cautious at that point, right? And like any time that something could go bad, I chose the more safe route, to the point where it was making it hard for us to have adventures, you know what I mean? Because you can't be 100% safe and live a really adventurous lifestyle, right? And then ironically, it was like a week or two after that storm that we found out that Desiree was pregnant with baby number 2. And so this trend I knew was only going to continue to go in the direction that it was going.
Well, not only knowing that we were gonna have another baby, maybe that was a big factor for you mentally, but like physically for me, I just started being unable to like grocery shop, to be in the heat.
Because of her morning sickness, she was nauseous.
I had no energy. I was feeling like I was gonna throw up any minute of the day. And so like getting Isabella in the dinghy and the stroller and Oso, and then like dinghying to town, and then finding a grocery cart and filling up on groceries, and then carrying this baby and this dog, like it was so much. And I was really, really struggling. And
we knew that even when your nausea passed, that once you had a newborn and a baby and a dog, and like obviously I would help, but I can't help all the time. I can't be there all the time. I've got videos to produce and whatever, so.
And then we had my mom come stay with us, which was amazing. And around that time, I was starting to feel a little bit better from my morning sickness and get a little bit more energy. And although having my mom on board was amazing, it actually made me so sad, the idea of her, I'm like gonna cry thinking about it, the idea of her leaving and just being like left alone again, like pregnant again. On the other side of the world from the support group that just loves us and wants to be there for us. And Isabella is so happy when she's with her family. You know, I started like getting really kind of depressed, and I, you know, at that point, Jordan dropped me off ashore one day for, you know, he was like, I think you need exercise, you need to get off the boat and have some you time. And I just like sat down on the side of the road and just was crying and just saying out loud, like, I wanna go home, I wanna go home. And I know that this happens to me when I'm pregnant. You know, I get this like nesting feeling where I want stability and I want family and I want just this like safe little bubble around me. Yeah, that's something that just we've been struggling with, is like balancing this feeling right now that I'm having of like, okay, this is really difficult, and the idea of, okay, it'll be difficult, but we'll get over it. Like we've gotten over every obstacle in the past, and we should just push through and we'll get onto the other side, and we'll be living this amazing, exceptional life with our family in these beautiful places. Like you just gotta be tough and push through.
So that leads us to the conversation that we need to have today, which is, do we want to keep sailing or do we want to move home? First of all, I think that it's important to note that that challenge that we gave ourselves when we left Malta of trying to figure out how we can sail around the world with a baby, I think that we successfully figured that out, right? We were able to do it. But I think that we realized how difficult it is to raise a baby by yourself completely, like without any support group. And that's actually, you know, as I'm sure you're aware, there are sailing channels that are successfully sailing around the world with kids and with babies. And I think the key ingredient there is that they've got a lot of help. Like they have people coming in to help all the time in some cases. And I feel like that would be essential. And that's something that we're not so into. Like Atticus is not really big enough for more crew than just us and the kids permanently. And that's almost how we'd want to do it, is like permanently have people with us. And I don't even know how we could make that work. And so another thing is that I've been surprised by how much Isabella at her age doesn't care that we're sailing around the world. She is just as happy like playing in a mud puddle as she is like in one of the most beautiful coves in all of the Mediterranean, right? Like it just doesn't matter where she is. And in fact, her preference, her favorite thing is to be around the humans that she has become comfortable with. So like our family and our friends. And with the sailing lifestyle, she was not really getting to know anyone really well. Like we'd get to know someone, she would get to know them, and then we would leave, and then she'd get to know new people. And so she was almost like afraid of strangers because the only consistent people in her life were us. So we started realizing that it's only us getting any value out of the sailing lifestyle. Now, I think that that changes at some age. I think kids at a certain age really do start to get value out of sailing around the world, being out in nature, all of that stuff. But we started to realize that that wouldn't be for a while.
I've seen sailing families who are ecstatic about their lifestyle. And I think a lot of that has to do with how long you've been doing it as well. Like if you've been dreaming about like sailing off into the sunset with your family for years and years and years, you've got years of experiencing the novelty and excitement of accomplishing your goal, of getting out on that sailboat in a new place and experiencing foreign cultures with your family.
Yeah.
Like that feeling is real. It's just that like we've been doing it for so long that I feel like we've kind of lost the magic of travel, like, which is something that is so crazy for me personally to say.
Like travel for its own sake.
Right.
Like new places for the sake of new places.
Right.
I mean, one really big fear that I have with this decision that we have to make is I really don't want to choose a path that is based on avoiding suffering. Because I really have, through our sailing experience over the course of the last 10 years, learned that to me, the key to happiness, the key to living a life that I think is meaningful is pursuing suffering voluntarily, right? Like not shying away from things that are difficult or that are painful, but rather going towards them, taking that burden on as long as it's for something that I think matters or is meaningful. And so I'm a little worried that what I'm basically saying here is like, well, the sailing lifestyle has become more hard, we're suffering more than ever, and so I want to avoid that. And that kind of terrifies me that I might be taking a step down that road.
But I think the difference is, like, I think suffering, doing things that are difficult is admirable if you're doing them for a goal that you really believe in. And I just think personally, for whatever reason, I just don't believe in the goal of like sailing over the horizon anymore. Like my dream right now, my goal, what I want to suffer for and do the difficult thing for is go home and figure out how we can make a living ashore and how we can be close to our family while they're getting older.
Build a home to raise kids in.
Yeah, it sounds like the easy option, but it's gonna be really hard. You know, like we've figured out our sailing lifestyle. In a way, like this is the easy choice.
Yeah, to just keep doing what we've been doing. I mean, that's a fair point.
Yeah, I think it's really difficult to not compare ourselves to other sailors who have circumnavigated or have made it to French Polynesia. And just the idea of just that word like quit and sell the boat, like it feels like we would be letting ourselves down in some way. But I also think that it takes bravery to be on a path and to realize if you continue on that path, you're not serving yourself and it's not working, you know, for whatever reason. We're like our hearts aren't into it anymore. And I think creating a new path is terrifying and a huge challenge, and it is going to be difficult. And so we'll just suffer in a different way for a different path and a different goal. And like maybe we'll get ashore and we'll build a beautiful house and we'll miss living on the water, and then maybe we'll start a new path if we're able to at that point in our lives. Like who knows? I just know that like I want to be working towards a goal that I believe in.
Yeah. Well, we are leaving Montenegro first thing tomorrow morning, and so we can kind of think about it, and then tomorrow, once we're underway, we can decide what we want to do. So after giving it a massive amount of thought, we have decided to sell the boat and to move back to the States. And so we're now sailing away from Porto Montenegro. We've checked out of Montenegro. We're heading to Brindisi, Italy, where the boat's gonna live until it sells, and we're gonna fly home from there. So we are sailing away from our last port. I mean, I don't wanna say ever.
Yeah.
I hope that we do this again at another phase of our life, but it's no guarantee. So maybe ever.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
I have mixed feelings because, this has become our home, and I feel so lucky that we have this platform and this freedom. And it feels so weird that this is the last time we're doing this. But I'm also really excited to just go home. I've been wanting to go back to the States for a long time now. It's like bittersweet. It feels good. I personally feel happy that this is our last sail, and I'm really trying to just take it all in and enjoy it. I don't feel any regrets. I feel like
You're just ready.
I'm ready. We've been living on boats for 12 years, It's gonna be so weird being a land person and losing this identity as sailors and as people who do something extraordinary. But I think what's more important, rather than our ego and sticking to that identity, is being true to ourselves. And I know for me, I've been ready to go home. Just saying the word home makes me emotional. And I'm happy. I'm really happy. But it does feel weird. It's like the weirdest feeling.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it feels a lot like the day before we drove
to Key West?
I'm not sad either. I'm not. I'm not. I'm telling you, I'm not sad in the sense that I have no regrets. This is the right decision. I feel so good about it. But it's just it's hard to close a door on a whole massive chapter of your life,
Yeah.
Even if you're ready to move on, it's hard. I feel that same energy and excitement and fear and anxiety that we felt the day before we went to go look at Atticus 1, And I think the difference is when we went to look at Atticus 1, we were so naive. We had no idea how much work it might be and how steep the trade-offs would be, how much we'd have to sacrifice. And so I feel now we're coming into this new phase where I know nothing about what we're about to do. And there's a giant learning curve, and it's gonna be hard, and we're gonna struggle, and there's gonna be days where it's just gonna be we can't believe that what we've done to our life,
Voluntarily.
Yeah. But at least this time, I have no illusions about that, and I'm ready for it.
No regrets looking out at the water?
No regrets, but I am gonna say it's there's certain things that haven't lost its magic. And one thing that I love is taking this boat off the dock with a destination ahead of us. I still love that. It's almost the only aspect of it that I still truly, truly love. It's just that concept of having a goal, having a dream, and having it in front of you, and having your home and everything you love pointing at it. And we can keep doing that, right? We're doing that. We have a goal, we're pointing at it. It's just gonna be a very different thing, and I'm gonna miss this right now. All right, well, we've got 24 hours.
You better enjoy
to
it.
Brindisi, Italy.
Better enjoy it, Captain.
Yeah.
I'll still call you Captain of the house.
Yeah, you gotta keep calling me Captain, that's right.
There's a moment when heading offshore, after you've left your anchorage, hoisted your sails, and killed the engine, when suddenly you see it, the empty horizon. You don't know exactly what you'll find out there. It might be tropical islands or dense fog, beautiful people, or very big waves. But you set your course anyway. You take up on your sheets and sail directly into the unknown. It's an act of faith. It's a statement that you believe that with all the things that could go wrong or go right, that the world, with all its fear and joy, is good, and that you choose to pursue it. For the past 10 years, sailing has been the ultimate adventure for us. It's allowed us to face real fear, travel to distant lands, and live far outside of civilization. And of course, there's a part of me that is terrified of the idea of giving it all up. I'm afraid to let go of that version of myself, the one that valued adventure over everything else. But my new existence as a father has brought me more joy and purpose than I ever could have imagined. And I honestly wouldn't trade it for anything. And I think that of all the things that sailing has taught me, the one that resonates the most is that life only becomes an adventure once we stop trying so desperately to control it. When we let go of our expectations and we let ourselves be carried out by the wind and tide. It's only once we embrace our fear and willingly step into the unknown that we can finally see how wonderful the world truly is.
I'm having like a bittersweet moment. It's your last minutes on the boat.
It doesn't seem real at all. Saying goodbye to this beautiful boat. Time for the next adventure.
I'm really happy and excited, but then I'm like terrified because I'm like, we have no idea where we're gonna be living, let alone like if we're gonna be able to afford a new lifestyle and figure out how to build something and flip it and make an income.
It's gonna be intense.